One of the most common reasons people fail isn't that they don't work hard enough or that they don't have the right opportunities. It's that they're not entirely sure what they're even working toward. It's like trying to hit a target in the dark. You can put in all the effort you want, but if you can't see the bullseye, you're just wasting arrows. Clarity isn't just about saying, I want to be successful or I want to be happy. Those are vague, feel-good statements. Clarity is about defining exactly what that means for you in specific, measurable, tangible ways. Because until you can name it, you can't aim for it. I meet so many people who work themselves to exhaustion, constantly busy, constantly moving, but they're moving in circles. They've never sat down to ask themselves, what does my finish line look like? And the truth is, if you can't see the finish line, you can't pace yourself toward it. You either burn out halfway there or you drift and endlessly wondering why nothing feels fulfilling. The problem isn't always lack of effort. It's lack of direction. Think about it. When you plan a trip, you don't just get in the car and start driving without knowing the destination. You use a map, GPS, or some kind of guide. You decide where you're going. Then you figure out the best route to get there. But when it comes to life goals, too many people just start driving. No plan, no coordinates, no roadmap. And then they wonder why they feel lost, frustrated, or like they've wasted years on something that doesn't matter to them anymore. Clarity isn't something that magically appears. It's something you create intentionally. It comes from taking time to pause and ask hard questions. What do I actually want? Why do I want it? What would my life look like if I got it? How would I feel? These questions strip away the noise, the influence of other people's expectations, and the distraction of trends or quick wins. When you get clear, you stop chasing everything and you start choosing something. But here's the part that trips people up. Clarity requires you to say no a lot. No to opportunities that don't align. No to distractions that seem appealing but lead nowhere. No to people who want to pull you onto their path instead of encouraging you on yours. And saying no can be uncomfortable. It feels like you're missing out, like you're closing doors. But the truth is, every no to the wrong thing is a yes to the right thing. I've seen it over and over again. People set goals that aren't really theirs. They're living someone else's dream. Maybe it's what their parents wanted for them. Maybe it's what looks impressive to friends. Maybe it's what they saw in a movie. And sure, they might achieve it. But when they get there, it feels hollow because it wasn't built on their own values. Clarity is about alignment. Your goals have to match your deepest priorities or they'll never feel worth the effort. When you have clarity, decision-making gets simpler. I'm not saying it becomes easy, but it becomes straightforward. You have a filter. Does this move me closer to my goal or not? If it does, you pursue it. If it doesn't, you let it go. Without that filter, every choice feels overwhelming because you don't know what's important and what's just noise. That's how people get stuck, spinning their wheels, making progress in random directions, but never actually arriving anywhere. The truth is, clarity gives you energy. It's not just about knowing where you're going. It's about knowing why you're going there. When you have a reason, a mission, a vision that feels deeply personal, you'll push through the tough days. You'll keep going when motivation fades because the purpose is bigger than your discomfort. Without that, you're relying on short bursts of enthusiasm, and those run out fast. And here's something else. Clarity isn't a one-time decision, it's a process. You check in with yourself regularly. Are these still my goals? Have my priorities shifted? Am I pursuing this because it matters now or because it used to matter years ago? Life changes, seasons change, and so should your clarity. Think of it like adjusting the GPS when there's road construction. You still want to reach the destination, but you may need a different route to get there. If you feel like you've been hustling for years and you're still not where you want to be, Maybe the issue isn't effort, it's aim. You can't win a race you haven't defined. Take the time to see your finish line. Because once you see it, everything else, the pace, the path, the persistence, falls into place. Clarity isn't a luxury, it's the foundation. Without it, even your best work will take you somewhere you never intended to go. And if you don't choose where you're headed, someone else will choose for you. One of the most overlooked reasons people fail is not because they're incapable or unwilling to try. It's because they lack consistency. They start strong, full of energy and intention, but somewhere along the way, they stop showing up in the same way. And here's the thing. Success isn't built in giant leaps. It's built in the small, unglamorous, repeated actions that compound over time. I've seen this so often. Someone gets inspired, sets a big goal, and for the first week, maybe even the first month, they're unstoppable. They wake up early, they work hard, they talk about their vision like it's already real, but then life happens. They get busy, tired, distracted. The urgency fades, and suddenly the thing that felt so important gets pushed to later. The problem is later never comes. And what was once a burning dream becomes another thing they gave up on. The truth is, the people who succeed aren't always the most talented, the smartest, or the luckiest. They're the ones who keep showing up long after the excitement is gone. They do the work even when it's boring, even when it's inconvenient, even when they're not in the mood. Consistency isn't about intensity. It's about commitment. You don't have to do it perfectly. You just have to keep doing it. It's like planting a seed. You can't dump a whole bucket of water on it one day and then ignore it for the next month. Growth doesn't work like that. You water it a little every day. You give it sunlight. You protect it from weeds. It's the steady care, not the occasional bursts of effort, that brings something to life. Your goals are the same way. Sporadic effort gives you sporadic results. A lot of people underestimate how powerful small, consistent habits are. They think this isn't making a difference because they don't see instant results. But success works on a delay. You're often working long before you see the payoff. And in that gap between effort and visible reward, most people quit. They think it's not working when really it's just not showing yet. Consistency also builds trust in yourself. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen your belief that you can follow through. And when you trust yourself, you start aiming higher, taking bigger risks because you know you have the discipline to keep going. But when you keep breaking promises to yourself, you weaken that trust. You start to hesitate, to doubt, to lower your standards. And let's be honest, staying consistent is hard because it's not always exciting. It's not always Instagram worthy. Sometimes it's just showing up for the 100th time to do something that feels ordinary. But those ordinary moments, stacked over weeks, months, and years, are what create extraordinary results. People will look at your success one day and call it overnight, but you'll know it was built in all the days no one was watching. Here's something else to consider. Consistency doesn't mean doing everything at once. In fact, that's where most people fail. They overwhelm themselves by trying to change their whole life in a week. You don't need to do 10 new habits perfectly. You need to do 1 or 2 things repeatedly until they become second nature. Then you add more. Progress isn't about speed, it's about sustainability. When you commit to showing up consistently, you also learn to work through the seasons when motivation is low. Motivation is great, but it's not reliable. It's like the weather. It changes day to day. Discipline is what keeps you going when motivation disappears. And discipline is simply the decision to keep moving forward, no matter how you feel in the moment. I've watched people transform their lives simply by sticking with something long enough for it to work. Not because they found a secret shortcut, but because they refused to stop. They made consistency their identity. They became the kind of person who shows up every single time, no matter what. And once you start seeing yourself that way, it changes everything. If you want to avoid failure, stop asking yourself, how fast can I get there? And start asking, how long can I keep going? Because the truth is, you don't have to move at lightning speed. You just have to make sure you never stop moving. And if you can master that, if you can keep showing up on the days when it's hard, when no one notices, when the results aren't visible yet, you've already put yourself in the top few % of people who actually make it. It's not about how you start. It's about how long you're willing to keep going. One of the most dangerous mistakes people make, and often without realizing it, is surrounding themselves with the wrong voices. I'm not just talking about outright toxic people, although those can certainly drag you down. I'm talking about the subtle, quiet influence of the people you spend the most time with, the conversations you listen to, the attitudes you absorb without even noticing. You might think you're making decisions independently, but the truth is your environment shapes you far more than you think. Think about it. If you spend most of your time around people who are constantly negative, who complain more than they act, who find problems instead of solutions, it doesn't matter how driven or optimistic you are, you will start absorbing that mindset. It's like being in a room where someone is smoking. Even if you never light a cigarette, you still end up breathing in the smoke. The energy you surround yourself with is the air your dreams are breathing. The wrong environment doesn't just affect your mood, it alters your standards. When everyone around you is comfortable settling for less, you start thinking that's normal. When no one pushes themselves, you stop pushing yourself. When mediocrity is the accepted standard, excellence starts to feel extra or unnecessary. It's subtle. You might not even realize your standards are slipping until years have passed and you wonder why you haven't moved forward. Here's the tricky part. Sometimes the people you need to be cautious about aren't strangers or casual acquaintances. They can be people you love, people who genuinely care about you, but whose worldview limits them. And without meaning to, they project those limits onto you. They tell you to be realistic. When you share a big goal, they remind you of all the reasons it might not work. They question why you're working so hard. They don't mean harm, but their advice comes from their own fears, their own failures, their own sense of what's possible. If you're not careful, you start to internalize those doubts. You start editing your dreams down to fit their comfort zone instead of expanding your life to fit yours. That's why it's so important to be intentional about the voices you allow into your inner circle. You don't have to cut people off entirely, but you do have to limit how much influence they have over your decisions, your mindset, and your belief in yourself. The flip side is equally true. When you surround yourself with people who are striving, who have vision, who are willing to take risks, it pulls you upward. You start to think bigger because big thinking becomes normal. You start to act bolder because you see others doing the same. Inspiration becomes contagious. Your standards rise simply because you're around people who won't accept less for themselves. It's not about creating some elite, exclusive group where only certain people are allowed in. It's about choosing proximity to those who fuel your growth instead of draining it. Sometimes that means seeking out mentors, joining communities that share your goals, or spending more time learning from people who are where you want to be. Sometimes it just means creating space for quiet so you can hear your own voice instead of being drowned out by everyone else's. Your future is not just shaped by your actions, it's shaped by the ecosystem you build around those actions. You can have the best plan, the strongest work ethic, and the most powerful vision. But if you keep planting yourself in soil that can't sustain growth, you will wither. And if you want to thrive, you need to be in an environment where thriving is possible, where your dreams aren't ridiculed, your efforts aren't dismissed, and your growth isn't seen as a threat. This is why so many people fail without even knowing why. They blame themselves for not having enough discipline or talent when in reality they've been swimming upstream against the current of their own surroundings. The current of their own surroundings. Change the current and the same amount of effort suddenly takes you further faster. It's not easy to make changes to your circle. It might mean having uncomfortable boundaries. It might mean feeling lonely for a while as you transition into a new season. But that temporary discomfort is worth it if it protects your long-term potential. You are the average of the influences you allow in. Your conversations, your relationships, your habits, your daily inputs. If you want to change your life, start by changing your atmosphere. Don't just ask, what do I want to do? Ask, who do I need to be around to make that possible? The truth is, you can't fully control what happens in life, but you can control the voices you give the most power to. And sometimes the most important decision you'll make is to stop letting small-minded conversations set the ceiling for your big life. One of the most subtle but damaging reasons people fail is because they underestimate the power of consistency. We live in a culture that celebrates intensity, big bursts of energy, dramatic overnight success stories, the grand reveal of transformation. But if you strip away the noise, you'll find that the people who actually build extraordinary lives aren't relying on those bursts. They're relying on steady, almost unglamorous commitment over time. The truth is, consistency is not exciting in the moment. It's showing up to do the work on the days you don't feel like it. It's practicing the skill again and again. When there's no applause, no recognition, no evidence that you're making progress, it's saying no to distractions over and over until it becomes second nature. And that's where most people stumble, not because they don't have the ability, but because they can't see the value in the small, repetitive steps. When you're consistent, you're building something you can't yet see. It's like planting seeds in the ground. You water them, you tend to them, but for weeks or months, it looks like nothing's happening. This is the stage where so many people quit. They think, if it's not showing results by now, maybe it's not working. What they don't realize is that roots are forming under the surface, laying the foundation for something that will grow stronger than they imagine if they just keep going. Consistency is also deeply tied to trust. Both the trust you build with yourself and the trust others place in you. When you follow through on what you say you're going to do, you send yourself a powerful message. I can rely on me. That self-trust becomes a force in your life. It allows you to take bigger risks because you know you have the discipline to back it up. On the flip side, every time you quit on yourself or break your own commitments, you chip away at that trust. And just like in any relationship, once trust is eroded, it takes time to rebuild. The challenge is that consistency doesn't come with immediate rewards. Skipping a workout today won't ruin your health. Blowing off a study session won't erase your knowledge. Ignoring your side project for a week won't kill your dream. But those small breaks in commitment compound over time. And here's the thing, so do the small acts of showing up. A little bit every day becomes a lot over a year, and a lot over a year becomes life changing over a decade. Sometimes people confuse consistency with perfection, and that's where they burn out. Being consistent doesn't mean never missing a day or never slipping up. It means showing up more often than not, and when you do fall off track, getting back on without making it a dramatic crisis. It's about building a rhythm you can actually sustain, one that's rooted in discipline but fueled by purpose. And purpose is crucial here. You can't force yourself to be consistent with something you don't truly care about. Not for long, anyway. Discipline will carry you through the early days, but meaning is what keeps you going when things get boring or hard. If you're struggling to stay consistent, sometimes the real question isn't about your discipline. It's about your why. Do you believe in what you're working toward? Do you see the value in it beyond the immediate results? Here's the other truth. Consistency requires patience. In a world obsessed with speed, patience feels like a weakness, but it's actually a superpower. If you can stick to something without needing instant validation, you put yourself in a category most people will never reach. That patience is what allows you to outlast the competition, to keep going after others have quit, and to finally reach a point where your results seem sudden to everyone else, even though you know they were years in the making. The irony is, when you master consistency, you stop worrying about making it by a certain time. You understand that the process is where the transformation happens, and as long as you keep showing up, success becomes inevitable. You stop searching for hacks and shortcuts because you realize the real hack is simply not quitting. It's not about how much you can do in a week. It's about how long you can keep doing it. And when you start thinking in years instead of days, everything changes. Your urgency shifts from how fast can I get there to how can I make sure I stay the course long enough to get there at all. That shift in thinking is what separates people who fade out from those who quietly, steadily, and inevitably rise to the top. The people who fail aren't always the least talented or the least intelligent. Often, they're the ones who stop too soon, mistaking slow progress for no progress. They walked away from the field just before the harvest. They gave up on the race when the finish line was just around the corner. They thought consistency was too small to matter, and in doing so, they missed the one thing that mattered most. If you want to avoid that mistake, make a promise to yourself: I will keep showing up, even when it's boring, even when it's slow, even when no one's watching, because that's how you turn small daily steps into a lifetime of extraordinary results. One of the most dangerous traps people fall into is surrounding themselves with the wrong environment and not even realizing it. We underestimate how much the people, places, and even the content we consume shape our thoughts, beliefs, and ultimately our actions. You can have the best intentions, the strongest work ethic, and the clearest vision, but if you spend most of your time in an environment that drains you, distracts you, or undermines your goals, it's like trying to plant a garden in the middle of a desert. You're setting yourself up to fail before you've even begun. The tricky thing is our environment influences us in subtle ways. It's not always as obvious as having toxic people in your life who openly criticize you. Sometimes it's the constant background noise of low expectations. It's the friends who, without malice, encourage you to take it easy when you're trying to push yourself. It's the workplace culture that rewards blending in rather than standing out. It's the online echo chamber that keeps you distracted with quick hits of entertainment while your dreams collect dust. These influences don't feel destructive in the moment, but they erode your focus and motivation over time. You become a reflection of what you're surrounded by. If you spend your days with people who complain constantly, you'll start to see the world through a lens of frustration and limitation. If you're around people who never take risks, you'll start to feel like risk is dangerous rather than necessary. But if you immerse yourself in an environment where excellence is the norm, where big goals are celebrated, and where action is valued over excuses, you can't help but level up. You start to absorb those values without even realizing it. Now, here's where many people go wrong. They believe they can stay in the same environment and rise above it. They convince themselves they're strong enough to resist the influence. But that's like swimming against a strong current every single day. It's exhausting, and eventually the current wins. The smarter move isn't to fight the current, it's to find water that flows in the direction you want to go. That might mean making tough decisions, like distancing yourself from certain friendships, spending less time in certain spaces, or deliberately seeking out new circles that challenge and inspire you. Sometimes, the wrong environment isn't made up of people. It's your habits and surroundings. Your phone is within reach every second, and you wonder why you can't focus. Your desk is cluttered and you wonder why you feel mentally scattered. Your evenings are filled with passive scrolling and you wonder why you don't have time for that skill you've been meaning to learn. We forget that our physical and digital spaces either support our growth or sabotage it. And the smallest changes, like creating a distraction-free work zone, curating what you allow into your feeds, or setting clear boundaries around your time, can shift your trajectory completely. The other side of environment is energy. You have to pay attention to how you feel after spending time with certain people or engaging in certain activities. Do you leave energized, inspired, and motivated? Or do you leave drained, doubtful, and heavy? That emotional feedback is your compass. The people who help you grow don't always make you feel comfortable in the moment. They push you, challenge you, and sometimes hold up a mirror you don't want to look into, but you always leave those interactions better than you came. The challenge is changing your environment takes courage. It can feel disloyal to outgrow people you've known for years. It can feel intimidating to walk into new spaces where you don't know anyone yet. It can feel uncomfortable to break old habits that have been part of your routine for years, but this discomfort is the price of progress. And the beautiful thing is, once you start surrounding yourself with the right influences, the momentum becomes self-sustaining. The right people will push you when you feel like stopping. The right surroundings will make it easier to do the right thing than the wrong thing. The right energy will remind you why you started in the first place. You don't have to overhaul your entire life overnight. Start small. Identify one part of your environment that's holding you back and make a shift. That could be replacing one unproductive habit with a constructive one. It could be reaching out to one person you admire and starting a conversation. It could be spending less time in spaces that keep you stagnant and more time in spaces that challenge you. Each small change compounds until your whole world starts working in your favor instead of against you. If you've been working hard and still not seeing results, it might not be that you're doing the wrong things. It might be that you're trying to do the right things in the wrong place with the wrong energy around you. And when you fix that, everything else starts to fall into place. Your environment is either an anchor holding you down or the wind in your sails pushing you forward. Choose wisely. One of the most underestimated reasons people fail is that they quit too soon. Not because they didn't have the ability, not because they lacked the talent, but because they didn't have the patience to let their effort compound. We live in a culture obsessed with speed. We want instant results, instant recognition, instant success. But real growth, whether in your career, relationships, or personal development, rarely happens on our timeline. It takes longer than we think, and that's where most people lose the game. Think about how many times in your life you started something with enthusiasm. You set the goal, you made the plan, you took the first steps. And then after a few weeks or months, you started wondering, why isn't it working yet? That creeping doubt starts to whisper, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe you should move on. And so you stop. But what if you had been only a few steps away from the breakthrough you wanted? What if the next call you didn't make, the next post you didn't publish, or the next rep you didn't do was the one that would have tipped everything in your favor? The truth is, progress is often invisible before it becomes obvious. A bamboo seed is a perfect example. It can sit in the ground for years with no visible growth, while underground it's building roots strong enough to support explosive growth later. If you judged it too soon, you'd call it a failure. But if you gave it the time it needed, you'd see something extraordinary. People are no different. Too many of us pull ourselves out of the ground before our roots are ready. The problem is that quitting early often feels logical in the moment. We tell ourselves we're being realistic, that it's just not meant to be, that we're saving time by moving on. But underneath those justifications is usually discomfort. the discomfort of uncertainty, the discomfort of putting in work without seeing immediate reward, the discomfort of not knowing how long it's going to take. And the hard truth is that success isn't about avoiding discomfort. It's about learning to carry it. Patience isn't passive. It's not sitting back and hoping things will magically fall into place. It's active persistence. It's showing up consistently, doing the work, refining your approach, and trusting that the small, unglamorous actions you take today will eventually add up to something bigger. It's reminding yourself that the time will pass whether you stick with it or not, so you might as well keep going. Here's the other thing. Impatience isn't just about time. It's about comparison. We see someone else hitting their goals faster and start to think we're behind. We forget that they might be in a completely different chapter of their story. They might have been working behind the scenes for years before you ever noticed them. Or maybe they're on a completely different path altogether. Either way, comparing your pace to theirs is like judging a marathon runner by the speed of a sprinter. It's the wrong measure. One of the most powerful habits you can develop is committing to the process, not the timeline. That means asking yourself, if it takes twice as long as I think it will, am I still willing to do it? If the answer is no, then maybe it's not truly important to you. But if the answer is yes, you've just given yourself a massive advantage over most people because you're prepared for the long game. Sometimes patience means weathering plateaus. You'll have moments when you feel stuck, when it seems like nothing is moving. But plateaus aren't a sign of failure. They're a sign of consolidation. They're when your skills are catching up to your ambition, when your systems are stabilizing, when your foundation is strengthening. If you keep pushing during those plateaus instead of walking away, you position yourself for the next leap forward. It's also worth remembering that your pace isn't always in your control. Life will throw interruptions your way. Illness, setbacks, personal challenges. Those aren't signs to quit. They're tests of your commitment. You may have to slow down, but slowing down is not the same as stopping. The difference between the people who eventually succeed and those who don't often comes down to one decision, Zain, to keep moving forward, even if it's inch by inch. The reward for patience is not just the end result, it's who you become along the way. You build resilience. You develop trust in yourself. You learn to work without constant external validation. And when the results finally come, you can handle them because you've built the character to sustain them. So the next time you feel like walking away, ask yourself if it's truly the end or if you're just in the middle of your bamboo season. Because the people who win aren't always the fastest or even the most talented. They're the ones who refuse to stop. Stay long enough for your roots to take hold and you'll be amazed at what grows